For centuries, the Roman legions stood as the iron backbone of an empire that stretched across 3 continents. Their conquests carved borders, enforced laws, and built roads that still exist today. Yet behind the triumphs and disciplined formations lay a brutal reality, a life of relentless hardship, punishing discipline, and the constant shadow of death. The journey into the ranks of the Roman army began with the sacramentum, a sacred oath binding a recruit's loyalty to Rome. Once spoken, there was no going back. He pledged to endure any torment, obey any order, and if necessary, lay down his life for the Republic, and later, the Empire. These words sealed a soldier's fate, stripping him of personal freedom. He could be flogged, starved, or even executed on the spot for disobedience. In return, he gained the prestige of the legion, a role revered and feared throughout the ancient world. After swearing the oath, the next trial was the brutal training. Day after day, recruits marched 18 to 20 miles in the searing heat or pouring rain, each man lugging gear that could weigh over 45 pounds. The pace was punishing. Finish under strict time limits or face severe penalties, anything from reduced rations to public flogging. Combat training was equally relentless. Wooden swords and shields were made intentionally heavier than real weapons to build strength and perfect technique. Armed, recruits slashed at wooden posts until their arms ached. Then they faced live sparring drills with their fellow trainees, forging speed, accuracy, and the reflexes needed to survive in the pandemonium of ancient warfare. Formation drilling hammered home the lesson of cohesion. In battle, the legion didn't fight as individuals, but as a single, unstoppable machine. One gap in the line, one moment of hesitation, could spell disaster. For many legionaries, home was a distant memory. Most of their careers were spent on the road, marching across hostile frontiers, scorching deserts, dense forests, or frigid mountains. 20 miles of marching in a day was not uncommon, and on arrival at a new campsite, their work was far from done. Every evening, they built a fortified encampment from scratch. They dug defensive ditches, erected palisades, and sectioned off areas for tents. Each camp was a miniature fortress, designed to deter enemy raids and maintain strict organization. Night after night, the legionaries repeated this process, leaving behind hundreds of temporary forts across the empire's frontiers. Once their daily labor ended, living conditions offered little relief. A legionary shared a small tent, the contubernium, with 7 other men, 8 soldiers in total. Personal space was non-existent. The ground was often damp, bedding was thin, and privacy was a luxury nobody could afford. Hygiene was a constant struggle. Baths were rare on the move, and improvised latrines had to be dug far enough to prevent contaminating water supplies, yet close enough to be safe and accessible. Epidemics could break out if sanitation faltered, turning a makeshift camp into a breeding ground for dysentery, lice infestations, and other illnesses. Roman discipline was legendary and terrifying. A soldier who dozed off on guard duty or questioned a superior's command risked violent retribution. Flogging with the dreaded flagrum whip was commonplace, often performed in front of the entire cohort as a warning to others. But the most infamous measure of all was decimation. If a unit showed cowardice or mutiny, 1 in every 10 soldiers was chosen, by lots, to be bludgeoned to death by his own comrades. Even the threat of it stamped out defiance and kept men fighting, even when all hope seemed lost. When you're surrounded by danger and exhaustion, you grasp at any comfort you can find. Soldiers gambled with dice, sharing what little coin they had. They sang marching songs and boasted of heroic feats, some real, some invented for a laugh. During religious festivals, they honored deities like Jupiter or Mars, seeking divine favor and a reprieve from the daily grind. Camaraderie within the contubernum was crucial. These men shared not just tents, but their fears and hopes. This bond offered a thin shield against the mental strain of constant warfare, heartbreak over distant loved ones, and the ever-present knowledge that tomorrow might be their last day. The Roman army needed fuel. Legionaries mostly subsisted on wheat, ground into flour to make crusty bread called panes, or boiled to make porridge, pulse. Salted pork or bacon provided protein, while vegetables, cheese, and legumes like lentils or beans rounded out meager meals. Wine was sometimes issued, but more commonly, soldiers drank posca, water mixed with vinegar to kill bacteria and quench thirst. Though simple, this diet gave them the raw calories and nutrients to survive harsh marches and vicious battles. Food might seem bland by modern standards, but in a world of continuous exertion, it was essential lifeblood. Even after a day of brutal marching, digging defenses, and standing guard, restful sleep was no guarantee. Legionaries slept in cluttered tents on straw mats or rough wooden planks, often plagued by cold, damp conditions or sweltering heat. The noise of other soldiers, the fear of night raids, and the relentless fatigue from daily labor took a devastating toll on their minds and bodies. Over time, this lack of proper rest, nicknamed the tormentum, vigil, or waking torture, led to chronic exhaustion. Soldiers battled not only enemy armies, but their own weary spirits. Even with rigorous training and formidable armor, war in the ancient world was a bloody gamble. Legionaries faced lacerations, puncture wounds from spears and arrows, or crush injuries from cavalry charges. Infection loomed with every cut. Before antibiotics, a minor gash could become a soldier's death sentence. Yet Rome boasted one of the most advanced battlefield medical systems of its time. Medici, army doctors, provided on-site triage, disinfecting wounds with vinegar or wine, stitching torn flesh, and setting fractures with splints. They had rudimentary surgical tools, used herbal sedatives, and transported severely injured men to permanent hospitals, valetudinaria, within fortress walls. This care, while limited by ancient standards, saved countless lives that would otherwise have been lost. It's estimated that only around half of all recruits lived long enough to complete their 25-year term. Disease, extreme weather, accidents, and brutal warfare all took their toll. Those who survived returned home with battered bodies and minds scarred by what they had witnessed. But for the survivors, Rome offered a rich reward, a substantial bonus, up to 12 years' pay, and a grant of farmland to call their own. After decades of marching and fighting, they could finally rest, raise a family, and enjoy the fruits of hard-earned peace. In many frontier provinces, retired legionaries founded new communities, shaping local economies and spreading Roman culture far beyond the capital. The Roman legionary was more than just a soldier. He was a builder, an enforcer, and a symbol of power that helped forge an empire. Through unyielding discipline, fierce loyalty, and unimaginable endurance, he expanded Rome's borders, often at the cost of his own health, dreams, and life. Despite the unspeakable hardships, the legionary spirit remains legendary, an enduring testament to the iron will that shaped the ancient world. Thank you for watching, and remember, each victory carried the weight of sacrifice. Ave Imperator. Long live the legionary spirit.